You! This area is restricted to residents, Officer Derek Sloan barked, voice sharp enough to cut through the hum of the park. He stormed toward a composed figure, Mr. Elijah Green, a well-dressed black man in his late 70s, seated quietly on a bench, a worn leather book resting on his lap. A young couple tugged their child's hand and turned away. Phones didn't rise. No one intervened. "That old guy doesn't look like he belongs," a jogger muttered. Elijah didn't flinch. "I'd rethink that tone if I were you," he said, calm as still water. Sloan yanked open Elijah's satchel. A leather badge case tumbled out, unopened, ignored. Behind them, a hoodie-wearing dog walker passed freely, earning a wave from Sloan. A faint blink lit Elijah's collar, recording, and beneath his coat, a small insignia pin caught the eye of a bystander on the bench. They had no idea who he really was. If you believe no one should be judged by their appearance, especially by those in power, hit like, subscribe, and drop justice in the comments. This story only gets deeper. Elijah Green was born in Birmingham, Alabama, where the buses were still segregated and the looks were louder than the laws. His father once dared to sit in a whites-only booth. A manager dragged him by the collar, screaming, while Elijah watched from the window. No older than 7. He learned that day, silence could keep you alive, but dignity had to be earned, inch by inch. He didn't grow up shouting. He listened. He watched. And later, he rewrote the rules. Not through speeches or podiums, but through paperwork and persistence. Federal compliance strategist, internal policy reformer, anonymous to the press, but essential to the system. Elijah never wanted the credit. He wanted results. Still, life didn't spare him. In his 40s, while changing a tire beside his daughter's broken-down car, 2 officers approached. Within minutes, he was face down on hot asphalt, his daughter sobbing nearby. That moment changed her forever. She became a civil rights attorney. It changed him too. He stopped hiding behind calm and started weaponizing it. Today, Elijah moves, like a ghost, through cities that have learned to smile through bias. He audits precincts, uncovers patterns, reports what others pretend not to see. He mentors the quiet ones, the ones who don't shout but don't forget. Now he's back in the town that once banned his father from its courthouse. The signage changed. The accents softened, but the eyes still heavy with judgment. He feels them now, just as he did back then. When a patrol officer asked what he was doing sitting alone on a park bench, Elijah simply said, "I monitor environments, especially ones with patterns." No smile, no explanation. The officer walked away but glanced back twice. That same morning, Officer Derek Sloan had waved off a white man, Brett Callahan, who'd parked illegally, music blaring, without tags. "We good, brother?" Sloan had said, laughing. But when Elijah sat still, reading quietly, Sloan's entire posture shifted. The badge became armor. The voice became sharp. No rules had been broken, just expectations. And in Sloan's world, that was enough. Have you ever felt misjudged before people even knew who you were? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. You people always act like the rules don't apply. Officer Sloan didn't even try to whisper. The words cut through the breeze, landing heavy in the ears of a mother who quickly pulled her son closer and walked faster, like Elijah Green had somehow become a threat by sitting still. Sloan stepped in front of him, legs apart, stance wide. "You've got no permit to sit here, old man. This area's for residents with valid registration." Elijah didn't blink. "I wasn't aware sitting on a bench required paperwork." That was all it took. Sloan shoved him. The force knocked Elijah back into the bench so abruptly that the wooden slats creaked. "You don't get to smart-mouth me." Gasps scattered around the park, but no one moved. Not yet. Elijah stayed calm, adjusting his glasses. Across the park, a woman in a tan blazer paused mid-scroll on her phone. She raised her head slowly, studying the scene. Then her eyes met Elijah's. He gave a barely noticeable nod. She blinked once. No smile, just presence. Near the hot dog stand, a teen angled their phone just enough to start recording. A cyclist slowed, circled once, then kept going. A man sipping his coffee didn't even flinch. "Must have done something," mumbled a man in a hoodie at the fountain. "It's always the attitude with these types." Sloan grabbed Elijah again, this time by the wrist. "You're resisting now?" His fingers tightened as he twisted the older man's arm. Not enough to injure, just enough to humiliate. Pain flickered across Elijah's face, but he didn't give in. Not yet. Mrs. Ramirez, the same woman who walked this park every morning, with her cane and a newspaper tucked under her arm, took 2 steps forward. "I should say something," she whispered. She didn't. She turned, pretending to admire the roses. Elijah straightened his spine, calmly adjusting his coat sleeve as if preparing for church, not conflict. Then he looked Sloan square in the face. "You might want to double-check what you're escalating." Sloan paused, just for a breath. Then his grip tightened. "What would you do if someone challenged you publicly based only on assumption?" "Drop your response in the comments. Don't make me call for backup," Sloan snapped, grabbing Elijah by the collar and yanking him to his feet. "You think you're untouchable?" The older man stumbled forward, barely catching himself, against the cruiser's hood. His glasses clattered to the ground beside him, one lens cracking against the pavement. Sloan didn't even glance down. The sounds of the park faded. Conversations clipped off mid-sentence. A dog stopped barking mid-yelp. The breeze carried nothing but stillness. Everyone watched, but no one spoke. "I've done nothing wrong," Elijah said, voice low but clear as glass. He straightened his shoulders, ignoring the sting in his joints. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear but age, and even that he refused to apologize for. Inside his sleeve, his fingertip pressed gently against the inner cuff. A small haptic click vibrated once. The signal was sent. No one noticed, but it mattered. "I swear I've seen that guy before," a jogger whispered to her friend near the flower bed. "Like in some hearing footage. Congress, maybe?" The doubt spread quietly. The certainty began to fray. Sloan grunted and slammed Elijah's palms flat against the cruiser hood. "Still think you're above the law?" He shoved Elijah's legs apart with his boot, forcing him into position, far rougher than policy required. "This is what happens when you play games." Across the street, 3 other officers leaned casually on their cruiser. One of them, Reynolds, gave a slow nod. Not an approval, just habit. Meanwhile, a teenage girl near the swings whispered, "He didn't do anything. This ain't right." Sides were forming, but no one wanted to lead them. Elijah didn't speak, didn't resist. He wasn't there to stop injustice, he was there to record it. Mr. Darnell, the man in the brown coat, slowed his walk. He passed, Elijah quietly murmuring, "Don't worry, they'll see." And then he was gone. Sloan returned to his cruiser, muttering into his radio. Elijah reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple black pen. He placed it on the hood. It was unremarkable, except to Detective Iris Monroe standing by the sidewalk. Her eyes locked on the pen, her jaw tensed. She recognized it. Only one man she'd trained under carried that pen. Elijah's coat vibrated once. A light pulse blinked inside. Across the park, a man in plain clothes shifted his stance, feet shoulder width, hands behind back. The shift was military, intentional. No word spoken, but everything had changed. "Old folks think the world still works the way it used to," sneered a kid near the bike rack. A few chuckled nervously. Not because it was funny, because it kept them from choosing a side. "I saw him drop something," said Cynthia Blake, arms folded tightly. "Probably hiding something. You can tell." The story began to twist again, reshaping Elijah into a narrative Sloan knew well, and the crowd wanted to believe. Finally, Elijah reached for his coat's inner pocket. "Don't even think about it!" Sloan roared. The crowd jolted. Camera phones raised. The silence exploded in static. "I'm recording everything," said a soft voice to Elijah's right. Tamika. She stepped forward now, shoulders squared. Phone steady. "I've seen enough of this," she said. "You're out of line." Sloan turned on her. "Step back or I'll detain you too." But his voice cracked. He was no longer in control, and he knew it. A city worker walked the row of benches, handing out bottled water to sweating joggers and stroller-pushing parents. He skipped Elijah entirely. It wasn't a mistake. It was a message, subtle, intentional, and now visible. What would you do if you were in Elijah's situation? Would you fight back or stay calm and let the truth reveal itself? Let us know in the comments. Officer Sloan snapped. Rage stripped the uniform of any authority. With both hands, he shoved Elijah, hard. The elderly man stumbled, knees buckling, collapsing onto the concrete. A groan escaped him as his palms scraped the pavement. Gasps echoed through the park like ricochets. Nobody laughed now. "He's resisting," Sloan shouted, spinning to the crowd as if pleading for backup. "He failed to show ID, failed to comply, and now he's getting aggressive." Some shook their heads, others just stared. A few still nodded, uncertain, uneasy. Elijah rose slowly. He brushed the dirt from his sleeve with the same patience he had for injustice. "I've complied with everything," he said, voice steady. "You just didn't want the answer." Phones were no longer hidden. They were everywhere. Elijah turned, walked toward the edge of the path. The crowd parted. Was he leaving? Then he stopped, turned, and walked back toward Sloan. Closer, straighter. No words, no fear. "Don't ignore me!" Sloan barked, panic creeping in. He slapped the book from Elijah's hand. It hit the pavement with a heavy, deliberate thud. "That's enough!" someone yelled. "You can't treat him like that!" A murmur rose. Movement followed. People who'd stayed seated now stood. Elijah locked eyes with Sloan. "You just made a mistake, a public one." Sloan lunged to grab him again, but this time a hand caught Sloan's wrist mid-swing. Detective Monroe. No words, just presence. And now all eyes were watching her. What do you think Elijah should do next? Should he stay quiet or let the truth shake the room? Let us know in the comments. Elijah adjusted the cuff of his jacket, then lifted his eyes to Sloan, direct, unwavering. The elder's voice was steady but different now. No longer defensive, no longer patient, just truth, distilled. "I've tolerated enough." The words weren't loud, but they didn't need to be. They cut cleaner than a raised voice ever could. They landed like a line drawn in stone. Sloan's arm was still mid-air, frozen where Monroe had caught him. He yanked it back and turned on the crowd like a performer catching his missed cue. "You escalated this," he shouted. "He refused lawful orders. He played coy with me." But this time, the crowd didn't nod. They watched. And the way they watched was different. Phones stayed up, but they weren't all pointed at Elijah anymore. Some slowly shifted. Now they focused on Sloan, on the quiver in his voice, on the sweat building at his collar. The power was still in the park, but it was no longer in his hands. Elijah stepped forward and calmly opened his satchel. Out came a slim, white envelope. He set it on the hood of the patrol cruiser with surgical precision. No flourish, no words. But Sloan leaned forward and saw his name typed cleanly across the front. For the first time that day, a chill traced down his spine. A few feet away, Tamika stepped forward. Elijah handed her a tiny card, black with a silver trim. She turned, walked it to Detective Monroe. No announcement, no explanation. Monroe took it, read it. Her eyes locked for a moment. Then, a single nod. She stepped back, pulling out her phone and walking toward the perimeter of the crowd. Sloan's face twitched. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded. His voice cracked in a way he couldn't recover from. "Who are you talking to? Who is he?" The question wasn't for the crowd. It was for himself. Mr. Darnell, the man in the brown coat, stepped a little closer, hands behind his back like he belonged to the moment. You want me to stay close in case this goes further? He asked, voice low. Elijah nodded once. You already are. The tension in the park shifted again. Not an explosion, just gravity tilting. Elijah turned to the crowd, not with a speech, but a sentence wrapped in steel. This was never about compliance, never about safety. It was always about how you treat people who look like me. And suddenly everyone felt it. The park, the police, the passive onlookers. It wasn't just a disagreement anymore, it was exposure. Sloan didn't mean to speak it aloud, but he did. I knew something was off the second he walked in. It was barely a mutter, but Tamika heard it. So did the teen filming. So did the silence. The racism was no longer coded. It was confessed. Monroe returned to the scene like a ripple pushing through still water. No sirens, no badge flashing, just deliberate footsteps. The birds didn't chirp. The wind didn't move. The entire park waited. Elijah lifted his hand and tapped the leather badge case that sat on the hood of the cruiser, now fully visible. You overlooked one thing, he said to Sloan, voice so even it almost felt rehearsed. Everything you've done today has been documented by me and by your own department. A pause. You just didn't know who I was. The badge case sat silent. Closed. But in that moment it screamed. What would you do in this situation? Would you stay calm, speak up, or walk away? Comment your thoughts below and hit like and subscribe. The park froze. A child held a melting popsicle mid-air. A jogger paused, earbuds still in hand. The street performer lowered his saxophone without a sound. Even the pigeons didn't move. All eyes settled on Elijah Green. Near the fountain, a man in a dark suit touched his earpiece and slowly moved behind Sloan. No one noticed, except the ones meant to. Elijah stepped forward, calm as ever, and placed the closed badge case face down on the cruiser's hood. A soft blue light blinked once. No words, just presence. What the hell is that? Sloan asked, his voice cracking under the weight of silence. Elijah didn't blink. You'll understand soon enough. If you think the antagonist's reaction was uncalled for, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe. He's too calm, someone whispered near the fountain. You don't think he's someone important? The question hung in the air like a tremor, and for the first time, curiosity overtook judgment. Detective Monroe stepped beside Elijah, her expression unreadable. She didn't speak. She simply handed him a small black tablet, its screen already awake. Elijah nodded once. No words exchanged, just clarity. He turned the screen to the crowd. The video began without warning. Grainy, low-res footage from inside a precinct conference room. Officer Derek Sloan stood near a dry erase board, arms folded. His voice crackled through the speakers. We know what those neighborhoods are like. Let the cameras roll. Just make sure they're pointed the other way. Laughter followed. Then more. Jokes, jabs, racial slurs disguised as policy. And Sloan's voice was always the loudest. Gasps erupted. Hands flew to mouths. One word slipped, out louder than the rest. Unreal. From behind the fountain, two sharply dressed figures stepped into the park. They didn't rush. They didn't need to. Their dark suits and clipped strides said enough. Federal Oversight Division. One of them, Agent Douglas, scanned the crowd, then nodded directly at Elijah. This man is not a detainee, Douglas announced clearly. He is the senior field auditor for federal oversight. He was sent here as a live subject auditor, and you've just failed the review. Phones rose again, like a synchronized wave. But this time, they weren't just recording a confrontation. They were capturing collapse. That's why he looked familiar, Cynthia Blake whispered, her earlier skepticism dissolving into shame. I saw him testify before the Senate once. Quiet, but powerful. Now the memory burned in real time. Elijah adjusted his coat. Then, slowly, with intent, flipped open the badge case on the cruiser. "Name's Elijah Green," he said, not for applause, but for truth. "Senior Compliance Advisor, DOJ. You've been under review for 12 days. He turned to Sloan. "And today, you confirmed everything I needed." Sloan stumbled back. I didn't know who you were." "But now, everyone else did." Agent Douglas stepped forward. "Officer Sloan, your duties are suspended, effective immediately, pending full investigation." Sloan's shoulder radio crackled softly, but no one answered. He was already alone. Elijah stepped back. No speech, no gloating. He didn't need to say more. His presence had already done the work. Two agents emerged from the crowd, collecting Sloan's body cam, cruiser keys, and complaint files. They moved like surgeons, efficient, precise. This wasn't impromptu, it was designed. "You never asked who I was," Elijah finally said. "You just assumed." Applause didn't erupt. It formed. Subtle nods, soft clapping. Even those who had stayed silent nodded now. "You chose bias," Elijah continued. "You weaponized assumptions. That's what you'll answer for." No venom, just truth, delivered like judgment. Officer Reynolds, who had nodded at Sloan earlier, took a single step back. Eyes down. No defense. Even he knew what was coming. Sloan looked toward the edge of the park. He inched backward, slowly. A step here, a glance there. But Monroe stepped directly into his path. "Remain where you are," she said, calm and firm. "You're under internal review and immediate transfer." No one moved to help him, not a single hand. "Your position is terminated," Agent Douglas added, "effective now." He unpinned Sloan's badge in front of everyone. No ceremony, just consequences. "And you'll report to federal oversight," Monroe followed, "for independent investigation. Outside your state's protection." Sloan opened his mouth. This wasn't personal, but no one replied, until Elijah did. "It became personal," he said, "the moment you made it public." Then he turned to the crowd. "To those who stayed silent, but stayed aware, thank you." He paused. "To those who laughed, maybe next time, look deeper." His gaze found Tamika. She nodded, not in triumph, just understanding. And as Elijah began to walk away, the park's digital board overhead lit up. Federal Auditor Elijah Green, National Integrity Division. The final wave of realization swept the park. This wasn't just a man they judged. It was a system they failed to see. Do you think the officer Derek Sloan deserves forgiveness, or should face the full consequences? Let us know in the comments. And if this story moved you, hit like and subscribe. As Elijah walked toward the edge of the park, the chaos behind him giving way to calm, a young father stepped forward with his daughter in tow. "I've never seen someone win without yelling," he said softly, eyes wide with awe. "It wasn't how loud you were, it was how right you stayed." By nightfall, the footage had circled the globe, not because of fire or fury, but because stillness shattered something deeper. "He didn't need to flex," one comment read. "His dignity did the talking." Another simply said, "More men like him." Later that evening, Elijah was asked to speak at a quiet civic forum. He didn't clear his throat. He didn't posture. He just said 5 words. "Power isn't noise, it's vision." To the young, the unseen, the misjudged, he added, "If they don't see your worth, don't lower yourself. Wait. One day, they'll have to rise to see you." Weeks later, Elijah returned to the same bench. This time, a new officer greeted him. "Good morning, sir. Welcome back." Same place, different respect. In a quiet debrief room, Sloan sat. No badge, no words, just listening. Back at headquarters, Elijah opened a file. Phase 2 activated, National Oversight Expansion. "Legacy," he said, "is the silence they remember you by." If you love this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that dignity belongs to everyone, not just the powerful. And in the comments, Tell us, should Sloan be forgiven or face the full consequences?